This is how to play the Castles of Burgundy, which is a tabletop game for 2 to 4 players, ages 12 and up, and each game runs about 30 to 90 minutes long. Each player gets their own player's board, which looks a little intimidating at first, until you realize that all of these sections are just keys and not actually part of the game. Players will attempt to cover their board with hexes, which is one way to get points in this game. There are 7 different types of hexes in this game. These are ships, and all of them are exactly the same. The animal tiles vary in number and types of animals on each hex. There are 8 different types of building tiles, and dark green tiles are castles, which are all exactly the same. The gray tiles are mines, and they're exactly the same too. The yellow tiles are knowledge, and they are all different. And finally, we have the black market, which includes tiles from every other category. You can tell they're part of the black market by the black hexagon that's on the bottom of each tile, and if you flip them over, the backs of them are black. Ultimately, players want to add tiles to their estate, which is the main part of the board. But first, they have to be gathered into the storage area. Then they can be moved to the estate. Players can gather up to 3 tiles in their storage area before one of them must be moved. To start the game, each player gets 1 free castle in the center of their board. Then they get 3 goods tiles that go into the goods storage space on their board. Different colored goods go into different boxes. However, if you have multiples of the same color, they get stacked on top of each other. Each player also gets 1 silverling, which is the currency in this game. And finally, they get the pair of dice that matches the color of their game piece. To set the main board up, you'll place randomly selected tiles on the matching colors. The numbers indicate how many players are in the game. In this example, I've set the game up for 2 players. Now place 5 stacks of 5 randomly selected goods into the top left corner of the board, and place 1 game piece for each player onto the victory point track, and then 1 for each player onto the turn order track, with the player who goes first on top. Then place the bonus tiles on the board. Now flip over the first stack of goods and deal them onto the round spaces, and you're ready to begin the game. The object of the game is for players to move tiles from the main board into their storage area, and then from their storage area onto their estate to earn points. Once the turn order is determined, the first player gets 1 free worker tile. Then the second player gets 2 free worker tiles. The third player gets 3, and the fourth player gets 4. Then the first player rolls their dice plus a single white die. The number rolled with the white die is where the first goods tile will be moved. In this case, it was a 4. Now the player gets 1 action for each die roll. In this case, it was a 2 and a 3. So the player can choose from one of the tiles from either the 2 or the 3 area as one of their actions. In this example, let's say they took the castle from the number 2 area. So the castle gets moved to the storage area on that player's board, and the number 2 die is moved to the corner of the board to indicate that that action is complete. And for their second action, they had a die roll of 3, so they can choose a tile from the 3 section and move it to their storage area. Now it's player 2's turn, and let's say they rolled a 5 and a 2. However, they wanted something from the 4 section, so they use 1 worker tile to change their 5 die roll into a 4. And then they can select from the 4 section. For their second action, they rolled a 2, so they can choose a tile from the 2 section, or they can move a tile from the storage area onto their estate as long as they have a spot that matches the color and the number they rolled. Tiles that are added to the estate must touch other tiles that are already there, so in this case the player can choose from these 2 spots, but since they rolled a 2, this is the obvious place it has to go. Whenever a ship is placed onto an estate, 2 things happen. First, that player's game piece moves up 1 spot on the turn order track, so the green player will go first in the next round. The second thing that happens is the player gets to take all the goods from any section on the board and move it to their board, regardless of the number that was rolled. If the player already has the same color goods on their player board, they'll just stack the new ones on top. However, if all 3 spots are already taken up on their board, and the goods they collected is a different color, they're not allowed to take them. Now for the second round, the green player gets to go first, so they also get to roll the white die. In this case, they rolled a 3, so the goods move to the section with number 3 on it. And then with their 2 actions, the player might choose to take a tile from the 2 and the 3 area and move it to their board. Another option that a player can do as an action is sell goods, which they can do as long as one of their die rolls matches one of the numbers on their goods. And when a player sells goods, all of the goods that match that number get sold at the same time. The player flips that pile of goods over and places them on the empty spot reserved for sold goods, and they gain 1 silverling regardless of how many tiles were flipped over. The rounds of the first phase will continue until all 5 goods tiles have been moved. And as ships are placed, the players move their game piece up on the turn order track. When one player catches up to another, their game piece goes on top, and they go ahead of the other player in the next round. Now it's time to move to phase 2, which is done by grabbing the next stack of goods tiles and placing them on the round spots. The other goods tiles that were moved in previous rounds remain on the board. However, the rest of the tiles get removed and the board is reset as if you were starting a new game. When a player covers all the spots in a section, they earn points as shown in this key. So in this example, this player earned 6 points because they covered a 3-spot section. They also earned 8 points because they closed out a section during the second phase of the game. So that player moves their marker up 14 spots on the victory point track. The first player to cover all the spots of the same color on the entire board gets to take the bonus tile of that color. And the second player to cover all of that color on their board gets the small bonus tile. At the end of the game, the player with the large bonus tile gets 5, 6, or 7 points depending on how many players there are. And the small tile is worth 2, 3, or 4 points. When a player places an animal tile, they immediately get points equal to the number of animals on that tile. So this player would have earned 4 points for the 4 pigs. Every time another tile is added to the same section with the same animals on it, all of the animals in the section are counted again. So in this example, the player would earn 7 points, even though they already got 4 points for the first 4 pigs. If the player placed this tile next, they'd earn 2 points for the 2 cows, but they would not count the pigs again because they're different animals. And then the player would earn 3 points for this tile with 3 chickens on it. However, this tile with 3 pigs would be worth 10 points because you'd add the prior pigs up once again. If the player then placed this tile with 3 pigs on it, it would only be worth 3 points because it's in a different section than the other pigs. At any point during their turn, a player can choose to spend 2 silverlings to buy 1 tile from the black market. This does not count as an action. When it comes to placing buildings, a player is not allowed to put 2 of the same building in the same area. So this would not be okay. However, this is fine because they're different buildings. Every mine tile that's placed on a board earns the player 1 silverling at the beginning of every new phase. And every knowledge tile gives that player an advantage over other players. For example, this knowledge tile allows this player to add or subtract 1 from any die roll when placing a castle, an animal, or a mine tile. After all 5 phases are complete, the players add up their endgame points, including any bonus tiles they collected throughout the game. All leftover silverlings and unsold goods are worth 1 point each, and every 2 worker tiles are worth 1 point. And each sold goods tile is worth 2, 3, or 4 points depending on how many players there are. And that's how to play the Castles of Burgundy.